In this video, you're going to discover my top 3 ways to select a great property management company. And make sure you stay tuned to the end of the video because I'm going to reveal the biggest ways that bad property managers will scam you out of your money. Let's dive right in. Step number 1 is you need to examine their business model. And this is something that nobody ever talks about, but it's extremely important. So you need to start asking questions like, how many employees do they have? Do they rent or own their own building where their office is? How much do they charge? Do they charge 8%, 10%? And then how many properties do they actually manage? Once you have these numbers, you can tell whether or not they're going to be a good property manager. And here's how. We've got 2 property management companies to choose from. Property Management Company A and Property Management Company B. Property Management Company A has 10 employees. They rent their office space for $4,000 a month. They charge their customers or the investors 8% of gross rents, and they have 200 properties under management. Let's go through this math quickly. If they have 10 employees, let's say they're paying them $3,000 a month, that means that their payroll right off the bat is $30K a month. Plus, they've got the expense of rent. Those are going to be their 2 biggest expenses. Right there, they're at $34,000 at just a break even. Let's say they've got 200 properties and they're bringing in $1,500 a month in rent per property. That's going to be a total of $300,000. And they're charging 8% of $300,000, which would only be $24,000. So there's no way that this company can make money unless they rip you off by charging you excessive fees for maintenance, for evictions, maybe marketing costs. That's the only way they can make up that discrepancy. Let's go over to Property Management Company B. They've got 5 employees, so at $3,000 a month, their payroll expenses are $15,000 a month. They have no rent expense because they actually own the building where their office is. They're charging a higher rate, 10%, and they have 200 properties at $1,500. That's going to be the same $300,000 coming in, and they're charging 10%, which means their revenue is going to be $30K a month. There's plenty of margin in there, so they can just run their normal business model and they don't have to rip you off. Most people just looking at this, most newbies would say, oh, I want to go with this company. They've got more employees, better customer service, they're charging me less. Oh, this is a no-brainer. But in reality, if you look and examine the business model, you actually want to go with company B all day long. Step number 2 is we want to look at references. I wouldn't put as much stock in references as I would their business model because anyone can say anything about any company online, especially with property managers. Their tenants are going to go on there a lot of times and say, oh, I don't like them because they made me pay rent, or who knows what the tenant's issue is. But you do want to check out the reviews. You also want to check out how long they've been in business. Another thing that I would suggest is going on Bigger Pockets. This is a website, an online forum that has a ton of fantastic information. It's basically a Facebook for real estate investors. Go on there and type in the name of the property management company and see what type of experience other investors have had with that company in the past. But again, I want to strongly reiterate that this is something that's good to do, but it's nowhere near as important and it's nowhere near as good a reflection on the company as step number 1 in analyzing their business model. Number 3 is you have to meet these property managers face to face. As you guys know from watching this channel, I'm a huge proponent of investing in areas outside of where you live, especially if you live in California, Washington, Oregon, Colorado. There's so many better places to allocate capital. But in doing so, you become even more reliant on your property manager. And it's something I've done for years, so it's definitely doable, but you have to take the time, even if it means flying out to XYZ city. Go out there, meet these people face to face. The first thing that you have to do, and I actually put it here number 3, it should have been number 1, is you've got to be honest with yourself. What does that mean? Well, you got to look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, Am I good at reading people or am I not so good? And if you're good at reading people, then move forward to the next step. If you're not, then grab a friend, grab a family member that is good at reading people and make sure you take them with you. But then you go and you have to ask yourself after your meeting, do they seem professional? It's pretty commonsensical. But you go in there and the receptionist is chewing gum or she's talking on her cell phone and you're supposed to meet them at 10 a.m. and they don't show up till 10:15 and you go back into some office with tacky furniture. That's not a good sign. That's a red flag and that's something that you should probably avoid. Next, you should just get an overall vibe. Once you meet 3 or 4 property managers, how do they seem? What type of feeling are you get? What's your intuition tell you? Is that someone that not only seems professional, but they seem trustworthy? Do they seem like there's someone that's extremely organized that could not only manage employees, but even more importantly, manage 200 properties with all of those tenants? Do they seem like they have systems in place for their maintenance? Do they have systems in place for their marketing properties when they go vacant? These things all go together into your analysis process. But at the end of the day, you got to just ask yourself, do you get a good vibe from that company? And here is that moment you have all been waiting for, the bonus. I'm going to share with you the biggest ways that property management companies rip you off. And number 1 is they upcharge you maintenance. So what this is they'll say, oh my gosh, your hot water heater went out. And you'll say, oh my goodness, well, how much does it cost to fix? And they'll say, well, we can fix it right away. We'll get our guy down there and it's only going to cost you $3,000. The problem with this is I know damn well that a hot water heater, if you drive down to Home Depot, will be about $1,000. And you can pay someone $500 at the most to go ahead and install that. And they know that, that's what they're paying. So they're out of pocket $1,500, but they're charging you $3,000, so they're just pocketing the additional $1,500. That is totally unethical. They should not be making that much money. There might be a slight upcharge just for their time, but this is the way that a lot of property management companies screw you without you even knowing it. The next way they rip you off is they charge you extremely high fees to evict a tenant and then market a property. When I first got into real estate investing, I had a company do this to me all the time, and I actually did the math and I saw that they charged so much for an eviction and marketing a new property. They were incentivized to turn over as many tenants as they possibly could because they made a lot more money on that than they did charging me the 10% of the gross monthly rents. Next is they charge you for vacant properties. And this is something that's really a pet peeve of mine. And a lot of property management companies do this. So if you have a tenant in the property and they collect that $1,500 a month in rent, of course they'll charge you 8 or 10% of that. But if the tenant moves and there's no one in that property for those 2 months, they'll still charge you a minimum fee. This is complete nonsense, and any company that does this, just avoid them like the plague. But I want to emphasize the fact that it's not that property managers go into the business and they're just evil people that want to rip you off. It's that they get into the business, they get their backs to the wall, and they find that their business model really doesn't make money if they just charge people 8% of the gross monthly rent. So they have to invent more ways to make money, and they do that by upcharging you, by charging you excessive fees, and then charging you if your property is vacant. So that's why it's so important to go back to step number 1 and analyze that business model to make sure that property management company that you're considering is actually profitable with their main revenue stream that should be charging you a percentage of gross monthly rents. All right, and now let me throw in a bonus tip, a freebie, just for you guys getting to the end of the video. Try to buy a turnkey property. If you're new at this and you don't really know what you're doing, if you don't have years experience remodeling homes and buying foreclosures, Just go to a good provider and buy something turnkey. Why? Because the majority of your costs are going to come in maintenance. That's how people get hurt in this business, especially the newbies. So if you can buy a turnkey property that already has a new roof, the foundation's great, has great new HVAC, you're going to eliminate a lot of those costs for the first 4 or 5 years while you're able to collect that positive cash flow and not be hurt by some big expense. And let me take it a step further and actually give you a referral for a turnkey provider that I'm familiar with. I have no affiliation with him whatsoever, but I've just listened to his podcast since 2012. He's really a pro, really knows his stuff. His name is Jason Hartman. So if you Google his name, you'll go to his website, take a look at what he does. And if you're asking yourself what market you should consider for potentially buying a rental property, check out this video right here. It has a formula that's really easy to use that will show you if that's a good market and if you're making a smart decision. And I will see you on the next video.